As the world battles the coronavirus pandemic, attention paid to other health conditions has dropped, even though millions of people still suffer from kidney disease, cancer, liver problems, and even obesity and heart-related diseases. Research has shown that one major factor responsible for obesity and heart condition is the consumption of trans fat. Trans fat is considered the worst type of fat you can eat. Unlike other dietary fats, trans fat raises your bad cholesterol and also lowers your good cholesterol. Now, what is trans fat, you may ask? Trans fat are a form of unsaturated fats. They come in both natural and artificial forms. Natural trans fat occur in the meat and dairy from ruminant animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats. However, artificial trans fat, otherwise known as industrial trans fat or partially hydrogenated fats, occur in foods like vegetable oil. But both natural and artificial trans fat are hazardous to the health. Joining us now to broaden this discourse is Dr. Jerome Mafeni. He is the project advisor on elimination of trans fatty acids network for health equity and development. Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning.
Now, perhaps what we talked about trans fat might just be talking top of the heads of a lot of persons, but we would need you to break it down for the layman on the streets to understand what trans fat really is and why it is important for us to talk about it at this time.
Trans fat is a particular component of the oils that we use for cooking that is created usually in industry when they pass vegetable oils through what is referred to as a hydrogenation process, where they pass the oil through some machines that adds extra hydrogen to the oils, so that the oils can be fried at very high temperatures, and that the oils can be solid at room temperature, and that the oils can have very long shelf life. So it's a special component, added to normal oils to improve their properties, so to speak, for commercial use.
When you say normal oils, are we saying there are also abnormal oils? Or?
Yes, the moment you hydrogenate oils to extend their shelf life, and to enable you to use those oils for very deep frying, you have made them abnormal.
All right. Now, we see that there are influx of branded and non-branded oils in the market. So how much of a concern is this generating? Yes, we have a pandemic on the one hand. There are several issues health-wise that has to be dealt with, but this seems to be a critical aspect that we have to talk about at this time.
Yes, it's critical because we really do not know the contents of the oils, branded or unbranded, in the market that our people consume. And so because we don't know, there's a very high potential, strong likelihood that a lot of the oils that we have in our markets are oils that have gone through hydrogenation processes, so that those oils can last for very long and can be used for very deep frying. And just to give people a sense of what I mean by deep frying, if one imagines how they try to fry chips and at home, and no matter how hard you try, your chips never really are crispy. But when you go to a fast food establishment and you order chips, the chips are always crispy, and then you wonder why. What is it that I do wrong at home and these people seem to always get right? And that's because they're using oils that enable them to fry at very high temperatures, which you cannot achieve at home. And most of the oils that are used in these commercial, restaurants and fast food establishments, are oils that contain high concentrations of industrially produced trans fatty acids.
Now, I see that you are talking about this, but then this issue has been on before now. When you look at efforts being made to perhaps advocate, would you say we are doing enough to really address these issues, because it seemingly contributes to a lot of the diseases we see out there?
Oh, certainly we're not doing enough. I think while there's been global attention to the issues of trans fatty acids, which in fact has made a WHO, the World Health Organization, to actually mandate countries to try to eliminate trans fatty acids from their food supply, latest by the year 2023, it is clear that on the continent of Africa, Nigeria in particular, we have not elevated this to the right level of seriousness that it deserves. And so while we're paying some attention to it, the attention is largely tokenistic. And I think we need to do more, because the populace is totally unaware that, in fact, a lot of what they consume and actually enjoy consuming on a daily basis is actually poisonous and injurious to their health.
Enjoy consuming. Yeah. That aspect is very, very important for us to harp on it. And so perhaps you would tell us what more should be done at this point before we look at perhaps the health implications with regards to the consumption of this trans fat.
I think the one thing that is critical, and I think that's what most countries have already embarked upon, is to put in place the relevant regulations that are enforceable to limit what industry does in terms of hydrogenating oils, to limit the importation of oils and foods that contain high concentrations of trans fats, and to also ensure that food products in the market are appropriately labeled, indicating the contents of what they have, including the concentrations or total absence of trans fats on those products. So those are the things that we need to do, put in place the regulations. And then once the regulations are in place, then we can now move to the next phase of educating the public, educating industry, and carrying out a proper enforcement.
So what challenges do you see, especially with regards to educating the public? Because like you mentioned earlier, they are part of things that they enjoy consuming. And you know, when it comes to Nigerians and their food, they don't joke with it.
Yes, one of the beautiful things about trans fatty acids is, even if the public doesn't know too much, so long as government does what is right, government can actually protect the populace in and despite themselves. And life will continue without the populace knowing that anything has really changed. And so that's one of the beautiful things about putting in place the right types of regulations and the right types of mechanisms for enforcement. Because once industry stops producing oils that have been partially hydrogenated, once the importers of food products stop importing oils and products that have high trans fatty acids, then the people suddenly will not be consuming food products high in trans fatty acids. And without knowing it, their health will begin to improve without them even having to do anything. So that's one of the beauties of public health, that government can protect the populace without the populace even knowing that this is happening. However, because the public is not aware and hasn't elevated this to the top echelons of national discourse, I use the word unfortunately, we have a government that seems to respond only to high public demand. And because the public is not aware, because the public is not demanding, government has gone silent. And so government is not applying the right type of urgency to enacting the kinds of relevant regulations that are required that should also guide the work of industry.
And that brings me to my next question, because you talked about this hasn't perhaps been brought to the knowledge of the top echelons for national discourse. So what is the level of your engagement with perhaps government or those in positions that could bring it to that spot so that it becomes a national discourse and attention is, the right attention is given to it?
The National Agency for Food Administration and Drug Control, NAFDAC, is the agency that has been mandated by national legislation to regulate all things related to foods and drugs in the country. So we already have an agency that has that mandate to ensure that what we consume as food, what we consume as drugs is regulated, and that the populace is protected from the harmful effects of the various food and drugs that we do consume. NAFDAC already, as an agency, has started the process of updating some of their regulations, their oils and fats regulations and oil and fats labeling regulations, to address this challenge. So that process has actually started. However, NAFDAC as an agency have so many other responsibilities. Yes, and so we have issues of fake drugs that has been a chronic epidemic. We have the COVID-19 coronavirus, pandemic that is currently very topical and is ravaging the country.
So you think they can handle this alone?
So definitely they need help, but I think they also need to simultaneously, as they address what perhaps are the topical front burner issues in front of the agency, they should also simultaneously be addressing some of these as well. And I do think that addressing and very quickly enacting the regulations on trans fatty acids will save this country a lot of pain, a lot of resources in terms of lost productivity, because people are dying without even knowing that what they consume, for why they are dying.
So talk to us now about the health implication of the continuous consumption of trans fats.
Yeah, consumption of foods high in trans fatty acids makes people predisposed to various non-communicable disorders. Top on the list being diseases of the heart and the blood circulatory system. And so when people consume these foods, like you mentioned in your introduction, people become predisposed to becoming obese, become fat, overweight. They become predisposed to having their vessels, their blood vessels blocked by excess fat, and so the vessels narrow. And when the vessels narrow, what happens is that you begin to get high blood pressure. When you get high blood pressure persistently, you begin to damage organs. Small vessels now develop the potential to burst, and when they burst in the brain, you get strokes. When the heart is pumping against too much pressure, the heart begins to enlarge, and when it enlarges to a particular point, it can't enlarge any further, the heart fails. When the blood is no longer moving properly in the system, it begins to create clots, and clots can break away and go block, blood supply to particular organs. And when blood supply to those organs again fails, those organs basically fail. So if the clot goes to the liver fails. If the clot blocks the kidney fails. If the clot blocks blood to the eye fails. You know, if it's to the brain, you know, etc. So that's one of the biggest challenges. We have lots of what we call, you know, cardiovascular disease complications. Now, aside from that, the incidence of diabetes also increases, and so people who ordinarily would not have suffered from diabetes suddenly find themselves, you know, developing adult onset diabetes. And trans fatty acids have also been seen to be associated with quite a number of cancers, including breast cancer and cancers, yes, of the intestinal system, you know. And so they are poisons that we consume on a daily basis without knowing.
But are there options for the populace that they can have in place of, you know, this trans fatty acids?
Oh, there are definitely options. There are many oils in the market, you know, canola oil, safflower oil.
All right, so that we are no longer, we are not promoting them.
Yes.
Okay. We'll have to leave the conversation here, but it is important that a lot of Nigerians get to understand the dangers of the consumption of trans fatty acids. Dr. Jerome Mafeni, Project Advisor on Elimination of Trans Fatty Acids, Network for Health, Equity and Development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.